Hi, my name is Chris Hunt. I'm the Senior Advisor for ReFED, and I'm here to talk to you today about the newly released Food Waste Policy Finder. So when ReFED created the roadmap, we identified public policy as one of the primary levers for driving food waste reduction. Essentially, if you create good policy, it promotes solutions, and ineffective policy, on the other hand, can slow or even prevent the implementation of these solutions. So ReFED partnered with the Harvard Law School Food Law and Policy Clinic to create the Policy Finder. Our goal with this was to offer a comprehensive overview of the existing food waste policy landscape in the US, while highlighting the best practices in order to help guide the development of effective public policy in the future. I'm going to give a quick tour of the tool along with an overview of the policies the tool covers. And then after this presentation will be one by Emily Broad-Leib of the Harvard Law School Food Law and Policy Clinic, who can talk more about the current developments in food waste policy. So this is what the tool looks like when you open it up. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this since we'd really like to encourage everyone on this webinar to go and explore the tool for themselves, but I'll highlight a few items. The tool features an interactive map which changes based on the policy filters selected on the right side. It includes 5 policies. And you can click through the map onto any state to find all the policies for that state. You can also click the federal tab at the top to find all the existing federal policies and some proposed federal policies. And finally, for those of you who like to see everything all at once in one place, we have a master policy matrix that you can download with all the policies for every state. So I'll start off by talking about date labeling regulations, the first of the policies that the tool covers. We've all seen date labels on food. So you have sell by, best by, expires on, etc. These are all essentially unregulated at the federal level. They're generally based on the manufacturer's best estimate of quality rather than reflecting food safety. However, this creates a lot of consumer confusion because many consumers don't understand what these labels mean, and they end up throwing away food that's actually still safe to eat just because they think it's spoiled or it's going to make them sick. To make matters worse, individual states have created their own date labeling requirements, which creates more confusion, and in some cases even requires retailers to throw away perfectly good food. To provide an example of the confusing web of state laws, if you look at New York doesn't have any date label requirements, but if you go next door to Vermont, date labels are required, but just for shellfish. If you cross the border over into New Hampshire from there, shellfish don't need to be labeled, but cream and prepackaged sandwiches have to be labeled. That's probably my favorite example. So the solution here is to eliminate all the unnecessary regulation and instead establish clear universal standards for date labels. If you go into the policy tool, there's actually a spotlight on date labeling section where you can dive into this issue and get more detail. But really, this is an area where solution can have a really significant impact. So right now, confusion about date labels causes about 20% of all consumer food waste. And as I mentioned before, it also drives waste in the retail sector. ReFED's roadmap estimates that standardizing these date labels could prevent 398,000 tons of food from being wasted every year, saving consumers $2.2 billion annually. ReFED's actually working on this issue now. We've convened a date labeling working group, which is a multi-stakeholder group that's supporting the rollout of the GMA and FMI initiative to move to just 2 standard date labels. So one would be for peak quality, and the other one would indicate food safety. We're developing a tool to help manufacturers determine which of these labels to use, which we're hoping to roll out later this year. And just so you know, all these slides have images of the map from the tool itself, along with key stats that we've pulled together. So the next policy is donation liability protection. As many of you know, the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Food Donation Act offers liability protection to food donors and nonprofits that distribute food donations to those in need. Basically, as long as the donor acts without gross negligence or intentional misconduct, they're protected. However, there are certain cases in which those protections don't exist, but several states have addressed this through state-level donation liability protections. So this includes protections when the end recipient pays for the donated food, protections for food service establishments and retailers that donate directly to individuals, protections regardless of compliance with non-safety related date labeling requirements, and protections for donations of past date foods. The bottom line here is that many donors are reluctant to donate food due to liability concerns. Now, nobody's ever actually been sued, but still, if you increase liability protections, you encourage more businesses to donate food. So this provides meals to those in need, while also preventing food from being wasted. Food recovery can also be promoted through state-level tax incentives for food donation. Now, federal incentives for food donation do exist, and they've been effective, but certain entities like farmers and small businesses don't benefit sufficiently. So to address this, several states offer state-level tax incentives to further promote donation. Overall, tax incentives for donation could prevent 383,000 tons of food from being wasted every year, while simultaneously providing 638 million meals to feed the hungry. And now we'll move on to recycling solutions. One effective way to keep certain food scraps out of the landfill is to use them as animal feed. There are federal regulations in place to ensure food safety and animal health, but some states impose additional regulations that restrict, or in some cases completely prohibit, this practice. The solution here is to eliminate unnecessary restrictions. Overall, ReFED estimates that feeding food scraps to animals could keep about 50,000 tons of food scraps out of the landfill every year. So last but not least, the Policy Finder highlights organic waste bans and waste recycling laws. Right now, 5 states and 6 municipalities prevent certain entities from sending food and other organic material to the landfill. In some cases, this applies only to businesses that generate a certain quantity of waste, and in other cases, it applies to everyone across the board, including individuals. So obviously, the broader the scope of these bans and recycling laws, the more food waste diversion occurs. These policies are great because they create a strong marketplace for food waste solutions. They encourage prevention and recycling solutions, and they also promote the development of an effective management of recycling facilities. So we have a couple slides here just to give an overview of the existing policy landscape. Right now, 7 states don't impose date labeling requirements. This is a good thing. However, 43 states do have requirements that increase consumer confusion, require retailers to throw away food that can still be good, and just generate food waste. 24 states have donation liability protections beyond the federal baseline. 9 states provide state-level tax incentives for food donation to encourage recovery. 16 states don't restrict the feeding of food scraps to animals, so that means that 34 states do impose restrictions, which inhibits recycling. And again, 5 states and 6 municipalities have organic waste bans or waste recycling laws. A key takeaway at the bottom here is that 12 states have introduced legislation just this year targeting food waste reduction, which clearly demonstrates the importance of having access to what policies are already out there and what they're doing. So finally, a few stats and some insights from the tool that we pulled together. Of the top 10 agricultural producing states, half have donation liability protections beyond the federal baseline, but only 2 offer state-level tax incentives, and only 1 has an organic waste recycling law. Of the top 10 food waste producing states in the US, again, half have donation liability protections beyond the federal baseline, but only 1 has state-level tax incentives, that's California. Only 1 has an organic waste recycling law, also California, and 9 states have state-level date labeling requirements. So again, only the state of New York has done away with date labeling requirements. And finally, for those 12 states with above average levels of food insecurity, so currently in the US, 12.7% of US households experience food insecurity. So this affects about 42 million Americans. Now, of those states with above average levels, only 2 offer state-level tax incentives for food donations, and only 6 offer liability protections beyond the federal baseline. So certainly some room for improvement there. And finally, I wanted to say on behalf of ReFED that we invite all those who have joined this webinar to become active users of both of our tools. And we also invite you to become engaged as reviewers, as content providers, and really as ambassadors for the tools. On the innovator side, we'd love to hear about new innovators that we should add to the database. And on the policy side, we'd love to hear about other policies that should be added, policies that need to be updated, or policy proposals that may be coming down the pike. So my contact information is here, chris.hunt@refed.com. Please feel free to get in touch with any feedback on the tool. And thank you very much for joining this webinar.